Welcome to this deep dive, tailored specifically for you, the learner. We're looking into something we all experience. Holding on to old ways of thinking, maybe even when they don't quite fit anymore. Think about that familiar comfort of a well-worn path, even if it's maybe leading you in circles. Today, we're going to explore why these mental ruts form and, maybe more importantly, how we can find fresh perspectives when our inner landscape shifts.
It's really about those internal blueprints we create, isn't it?
Blueprints.
Maps of how we believe the world works or how our relationships function, maybe even what we think we're capable of. Imagine having a really detailed map of a city,
Okay.
but a key bridge on that map has actually been gone for years.
Yeah.
You might keep trying to navigate based on that missing connection, right? Creating all sorts of frustration and detours.
Oh, yeah. That image of the missing bridge, that really resonates. It's not just about physical spaces then, is it?
Not at all.
We can have these, deeply ingrained ideas about our careers, for instance.
Yeah.
Someone like, let's call her Anna. She might have a university-era map of success.
Yeah.
Built entirely on academic achievements.
Right, very common.
So even when she feels drawn to maybe start her own business, that old map keeps highlighting the wrongness of this uncharted territory. It makes it hard for her to even consider it seriously.
Exactly. It's as if that outdated information takes up prime real estate in our minds. It just obscures what's actually present now. Think of it like focusing really intently on just one loud conversation in a crowded room. It makes it impossible to hear the other, potentially more relevant discussions happening all around you. That's the power of what we focus on, the figure we call it, and how it shapes what just fades into the ground of our awareness.
So these old mental maps, they're not just sort of passively sitting there.
No.
They actively distort how we see things. It's almost like wearing glasses with the wrong prescription.
That's a perfect analogy.
The whole world looks a little off, and you might not even realize it's the lenses that are the problem.
Precisely. And the act of letting go. Well, it isn't simply a matter of deciding to forget something.
Right, if only it were that easy.
Our minds have these deeply ingrained patterns, almost like well-worn neural pathways. Overcoming those automatic responses requires a conscious effort to access and reinterpret our experiences, to create new pathways.
So it's not about erasing the old map.
No, it's about redrawing it based on the current terrain.
It's fascinating to think about the idea of emotional phantom pains. Like someone who has lost a limb, still feeling sensations, we can feel these lingering effects of situations or identities that, well, they just don't exist anymore.
Yes. An old friendship might trigger a pang of sadness, maybe, even if the reasons for its ending are long past and understood.
And the crucial difference you're saying with these psychological maps is that they don't just reflect reality.
They actively create it for us. Anna's belief that success only looks like academic achievement shapes her self-perception. It literally limits the possibilities she even considers viable.
Wow. The map becomes the territory, in a way.
In a very real way, yes.
So when we talk about something no longer existing psychologically, it's not just an empty space, is that right?
Not at all. It's filled with these echoes, these lingering associations.
Like after a relationship ends.
Exactly. The end of a relationship leaves behind this trail of shared memories, songs, places, even smells sometimes.
Oh, definitely.
That can unexpectedly pull us right back into that past emotional landscape. And from a Gestalt perspective, our past and present aren't neatly separated into boxes.
No.
They're part of one interconnected field of awareness. So if those outdated elements are still dominant, they can actually prevent new patterns, new ways of being from fully forming.
It sounds like an old program running in the background on your computer, slowing everything else down.
That's a great way to put it. It hogs the resources.
The language we use around moving on, letting go, getting closure, it suggests this clean break, this sort of linear process.
Right. But experience tells us otherwise.
Yeah, our experience is often much more fluid, isn't it? A constant negotiation maybe between the past and the present. We might feel like we've moved on, and then bang, something triggers a powerful memory, pulls us right back.
And that highlights a really key insight. The difficulty isn't necessarily our attachment to the past itself, but rather our perception of its relationship to our present.
So how we see it now.
Exactly. If we see the past as this fixed, unresolved thing, it creates tension. But if we can see how we are interpreting that past in our current moment, right now, it opens up possibilities for reevaluation, for integration.
It makes me think of looking at an abandoned building. Some people just see ruins, decay. But an artist might see the potential for a new creation, a space to be transformed.
Yes.
So it's about shifting our perspective on our own internal abandoned buildings, seeing not just what was lost, but the potential for what could emerge from it.
Beautifully put. It makes you consider how much of what we perceive as real is actually a coherent narrative constructed by our own minds.
A story we tell ourselves.
And sometimes these narratives, while they feel comforting in their familiarity, can actually limit our growth. They keep us bound to outdated perspectives.
That ties into William James's idea, maybe. Consciousness as a continuous stream, always interpreting, reinterpreting.
Precisely. Our mental maps are tools within that stream. Incredibly helpful for navigating, of course.
Sure.
But they become constraints when we forget they are just tools and we mistake them for the actual ever-changing territory.
Okay, so back to the missing bridge. Instead of just seeing it as an ending, a problem.
What if we see it as an invitation? An invitation to explore alternative routes.
Ah.
Perhaps a ferry service has started up,
Mm-hmm.
or a new trail has formed along the riverbank. It's about shifting from that feeling of frustration or confusion to one of curiosity. What else might be possible now that the old way is gone?
And that shift in perspective, that's the crucial first step, isn't it?
It is. Becoming aware of those outdated maps. Recognizing the friction between our expectations based on the old map and the reality we're actually facing. That awareness, that moment of realizing, hang on, this isn't working anymore, that feels like the real turning point.
Absolutely. That conscious recognition is a core principle in Gestalt psychology. Awareness precedes change. It's about exercising our psychological flexibility.
Flexibility.
Learning to see beyond our immediate assumptions, our first impressions, and recognizing the underlying patterns that shape our experience. It leads to a deeper, more nuanced understanding of how our perception itself creates our reality.
Okay, so once we start to maybe see these maps and how they might be leading us astray, what makes some of these old patterns so darn persistent? Why do they stick around?
Well, that leads us into the fascinating idea of unfinished Gestalt.
Unfinished Gestalts, okay.
Our minds have this natural tendency, a drive really, to seek completion, harmony, coherence.
Like putting puzzle pieces together. Exactly. So when an experience feels unresolved, incomplete, it creates a kind of psychological tension, a drive towards closure. Think about being in a conversation where someone just abruptly walks away mid-sentence.
Yeah, that feeling is awful, unsettling.
Right. That lack of completion can be quite unsettling because the pattern isn't closed.
It's like that nagging feeling you get when you know you've forgotten something important, but you can't quite place it.
Yes.
That unfinished quality keeps it active in your mind. It's like it's demanding resolution somehow.
Precisely. This is related to something called the Zeigarnik effect. Research showed that people tend to remember unfinished or interrupted tasks much better than completed ones.
Because they're still sort of buzzing.
In a way, yes. That lack of closure keeps them present, active in our awareness.
And it's not just isolated experiences, right? You said earlier our whole field of awareness is interconnected.
That's key. So an unresolved issue from the past, maybe something significant, can act like a subtle undercurrent. It influences our thoughts, our feelings, our choices in the present, even if we're not consciously aware of the connection.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Consider someone like Mark. Let's say Mark left his hometown very abruptly years ago, maybe under difficult circumstances, never really said proper goodbyes.
Okay.
That unfinished chapter, that lack of closure, can subtly influence his current relationships. He might find himself creating a pattern of both desperately wanting deep connection, but also being terrified of abandonment.
Because the leaving was unresolved.
It's a direct echo, a resonance from that unresolved past experience playing out now.
And these patterns, they become deeply ingrained, don't they? Almost wired into us. It's not just a matter of deciding to think differently.
Oh, definitely not. There's a real inertia there.
It sounds like a groove in an old vinyl record.
That's a good way to think about it. The needle naturally wants to follow that familiar path, that established groove. Changing the record or even just moving the needle to a new groove on the same record, well, that requires a conscious, deliberate effort.
So when something significant happens, something may be traumatic or just incomplete, and it feels unresolved, it creates these psychological hotspots. Is that a fair way to put it?
I like that term. Yes. Areas of high emotional charge that continue to attract our attention, almost like little gravity wells in our consciousness.
Okay. And going back to figure ground,
Yes.
these incomplete experiences, these hot spots, they tend to dominate the figure. what we focus on.
Exactly. They grab the spotlight, making it difficult to clearly see other aspects of our present reality. It's like trying to focus on a conversation when there's a really bright, flashing light just in your peripheral vision.
It keeps drawing your attention away.
It pulls your focus. Consider, Sarah, maybe she experienced a really difficult, perhaps sudden breakup.
Okay.
She might unconsciously find herself testing new partners, maybe pushing them away slightly, almost recreating certain aspects of how the previous relationship ended.
Oh, wow. Not because she wants to repeat it.
Not consciously, no.
Yeah.
But because that unresolved pattern, that unfinished gestalt from the past, is still actively organizing her present experiences. It's shaping how she interacts now.
But then we have those moments of insight, right? The aha experiences.
Yes, those are crucial.
How does Gestalt see those? Are they gradual?
Interestingly, no. From a Gestalt perspective, insights often aren't gradual dawning understandings. They're typically sudden reorganizations of our entire field of awareness.
Like a switch flips.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like looking at one of those ambiguous images, the ones that could be a vase or two faces.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly, after staring at it, the image resolves. The whole picture clicks into place and you see it differently. There's often a feeling of clarity, sometimes even release.
And how does that happen? How do we get to that aha moment?
It often comes from bringing conscious attention, patient attention, to these unresolved areas.
Yeah.
Noticing the patterns, recognizing repetitions.
Yeah.
Maybe seeing the connections between the past feeling and the present action for the first time. It's this process of observing
Okay.
that allows the field to suddenly rearrange itself into a new, more coherent configuration.
And the paradox here seems to be that real transformation, real change, often happens through acceptance, not through forcefully resisting the pattern.
That's a profound paradox, yes. The more we try to suppress or ignore these patterns, the stronger they can sometimes become. They dig in their heels.
It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater, isn't it?
Perfect image. The harder you push down, the more forcefully it will eventually pop back up.
So there's a need for a different approach, something gentler.
Precisely. Think of it more like gently cupping your hands around water, allowing it to find its own shape within your hands, rather than trying to tightly grip or control it. That acceptance, that allowing, it creates the space for a more natural reorganization to occur.
And this journey towards liberation, then towards updating those maps and completing those gestalts, it involves becoming aware of these patterns.
Yes, first seeing them.
Understanding their impact on us now.
How they organize things.
Learning to relate to them differently, maybe not fighting them so hard.
Yes, finding a new relationship.
And ultimately allowing new configurations, new possibilities to emerge. It feels much more like a process of unfolding rather than forcing.
It really is. It's much like how an ecosystem adapts after a disruption,
Okay.
like a fire or a flood.
Okay.
It doesn't simply revert exactly to its previous state. New relationships form, new species might thrive, new possibilities emerge from the change. Our own psychological growth can feel cyclical like that too.
So similar challenges might recur.
They might. But each time, potentially, with a deeper level of awareness and a greater potential for new, more integrated outcomes.
And that boundary between ourselves and the world that gets influenced by these old maps and unfinished issues too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The contact boundary, we call it. It can become either too rigid, shutting things out, or too permeable, letting everything flood in based on these unresolved patterns.
And awareness and acceptance are key to restoring a healthier boundary, more flexible.
Yeah, a natural flexibility, allowing for authentic responses to the present moment rather than reactions dictated solely by the past.
What's fascinating is that these psychological patterns, they aren't fixed entities, are they? Like concrete blocks.
Not at all. They arise from the constant interplay between our internal structures, our history, our tendencies, and our external circumstances. Much like sunlight filtering through leaves creates these beautiful shifting patterns on the ground. They're real, but not permanent or arbitrary.
So approaching our own growth with that kind of patience and curiosity seems vital.
It really does. And the observer effect is relevant here too, even in psychology. The very act of paying attention, of observing these patterns within ourselves with gentle curiosity, that starts to shift them.
Just the noticing changes things.
It alters the energetic configuration, you could say. It shines a light on something that was previously operating in the shadows automatically. That awareness creates new possibilities.
Let's go back to Mark, the one who left his hometown abruptly.
Okay.
As he starts to consciously observe his tendency to withdraw or test people in new relationships, maybe noticing the fear that comes up and then connecting it, really feeling the connection to that past abrupt departure and the lack of closure.
Yes, that deepening awareness.
That very awareness begins to create a space for change, leading eventually perhaps to a new understanding, that aha moment about the pattern.
That's often how it unfolds. It's this sustained awareness and acceptance, this gentle persistence like melting ice rather than smashing it, that fosters real transformation, not just sheer willpower trying to force the pattern away.
Okay, so recapping the key ideas here. These unresolved experiences, these unfinished gestalts, they have a real pervasive influence on our consciousness now.
Yes, affecting the entire field.
And true transformation seems to come through patient awareness and acceptance, not fighting.
Exactly. It's a process much more like ecological evolution within our own minds.
So maybe the goal isn't really to erase the past entirely or cut off these patterns completely, but maybe to learn how to integrate them, to sort of dance with them, see how those old experiences can actually inform our present in new, maybe unexpected ways.
That leads us beautifully into what we might call the paradox of liberation.
Paradox, okay.
Think about the idea in physics of quantum entanglement.
Right, where particles remain connected somehow regardless of distance.
It's a bit like that, metaphorically speaking. Our past experiences can continue to influence us through these subtle, often non-logical connections. Those unresolved gestalts are still whispering, you could say, in our awareness, even if the original event is long gone.
So, liberation, maybe it isn't about severing those connections entirely.
Perhaps not.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's more about transforming their nature. Think of it like a kind of psychological alchemy. Taking those base experiences, the difficult stuff, the unfinished business, and finding ways to refine them into something valuable, something that informs our present wisdom.
So the idea is that the parts of our past that feel most restrictive
Often contain the very seeds of our greatest growth. That's a key realization.
Let's revisit Anna, the one with the academic success map.
Yes.
That rigorous academic training, which initially felt like a really restrictive map for what success could be.
It limited her view of entrepreneurship.
Right. But maybe that same training provided the discipline, the focus, the analytical skills that are now proving invaluable in her actually building her own business.
Exactly. The limitation, once seen differently, once integrated, becomes a foundation, a source of strength.
It reminds me a little of Heidegger's idea of being toward death.
Go on.
How the awareness of our finitude, our limited time, can actually infuse life with a greater sense of meaning and urgency.
Yes, a powerful parallel. Similarly, confronting those aspects of our past that no longer exist, really facing them, can create fertile ground for living more authentically in the present. It allows us to make conscious choices between just clinging to the familiar or embracing the uncertainty of the new. And that's often a choice we have to make again and again.
Not a one-time thing.
Rarely. And the Gestalt concept of creative indifference speaks to this too. It's about releasing our rigid attachment to specific outcomes, to how things should be according to the old map.
Letting go of the need to control it all.
Precisely. It opens us up to possibilities we literally can't foresee from our current vantage point. Much like water naturally finds its own level, its own path, if you don't try to force it. Allowing our psychological patterns to flow more naturally with awareness can lead to unexpected and often beneficial outcomes.
I love the analogy of kintsugi.
Ah, yes. The Japanese art.
Repairing broken pottery with gold lacquer. It doesn't hide the cracks, it highlights them. It sees them not as flaws, but as part of the object's unique history, adding to its beauty and strength.
A perfect metaphor for integrating our past patterns. Even the difficult ones, the breaks. They add a unique richness, a texture, a depth to our consciousness. Trying to completely erase them, to make the pot look brand new, well, you risk losing that depth, that history.
Exactly. And that's where the line between what exists and what no longer exists gets really blurry, doesn't it?
It really does. In a sense, maybe all our experiences continue to exist within us, perhaps on different layers or dimensions of our consciousness. They're not simply deleted like a computer file.
So, ended relationships, past jobs, old identities, they still contribute to the fabric of who we are today.
They absolutely do. It makes me think of David Bohm's idea of the implicate order.
Okay.
Idea of a deeper enfolded reality where everything is interconnected, nothing truly disappears, it just transforms its expression, unfolds differently. Perhaps we're navigating this implicate order within our own consciousness.
Which really shifts our whole understanding of identity then. If our past experiences never fully vanish, who are we? Are we just the sum of these completed and uncompleted gestalts, these patterns? Or is there something more fluid, more emergent about who we are becoming moment by moment?
It points towards that fluidity, I think, and that leads to this potentially radical but also quite hopeful insight. Liberation isn't a final destination you arrive at.
Not a state of being fixed.
No, it's more like an ongoing process of becoming,
Ah,
of continuously discovering new layers of meaning within ourselves and our experiences, like peeling an infinite onion.
that sounds exhausting, but also hopeful.
Hopeful, I think, because it means growth is always available, change is always possible. It's limited, perhaps, only by our willingness to engage with our own inner world with curiosity and courage.
Can you give another example? Maybe Elena.
Oh, yes, Elena, who struggled with inherited perfectionism. She learned over time to recognize how this pattern organized her experience, driving both her impressive achievements but also her constant anxiety. But then, the transformation wasn't about eliminating the perfectionism entirely. That might not even be possible or desirable. Instead, she found an unexpected way to channel that same intense focus, that drive for precision, into her artistic expression.
So she redirected its energy.
Exactly. It wasn't about transcending or rising above the pattern, which is one philosophical approach. It was more about integration, deeply engaging with all aspects of herself, even the difficult ones, to find creative ways of moving forward. Gestalt really favors that kind of integration.
It sounds like Rilke's advice: love the questions themselves.
Yes. Extending that patience, that loving attention, even to the unfinished, unresolved aspects of ourselves, recognizing they might hold vital energy or clues for our future evolution.
So going back one last time to that missing bridge,
Okay.
reinterpreting it again. Maybe it isn't just a void or even just an invitation to find a new path on the same level. Maybe it's also a kind of portal,
A portal. Interesting.
connecting different dimensions of our experience: the past, the present, the potential future, and the river flowing beneath it. That's our stream of consciousness, always moving, constantly reshaping the landscape.
I like that image very much. And it emphasizes that we're not just passive observers of this landscape. We are active participants in our own becoming.
And there are so many more avenues this opens up, aren't there? How these patterns manifest collectively in families or societies,
Collective gestalts.
the role of our physical bodies in holding on to these experiences, the whole field of somatic work,
Embodiment, yes. Crucial.
and even how technology might be impacting our memory, our sense of identity, our attention patterns.
Huge questions for our time. True insight, I find, always opens more doors than it closes. It invites further exploration.
So ultimately, this whole journey of liberation, of updating our maps, it really feels like a continuous act of navigation.
Constant adjustment.
Constantly adjusting our course as we learn more about the terrain of our own consciousness, discovering new lands within ourselves.
And the key thing to remember, perhaps the most hopeful thing, is that every ending truly holds the potential for new beginnings. Those lost bridges might reappear in unexpected forms downriver. And even our most outdated maps can still offer valuable guidance, surprising insights, when viewed with a wider, more accepting, more integrated awareness.
So as our listeners reflect on their own maps, their own internal landscapes, maybe consider which ones might be due for an update. What bridges in your life perhaps no longer exist as they once did, and what new paths might be unfolding subtly in their place.
And the core insight really is that transformation isn't usually about forcing change through sheer will. It's more about cultivating a deeper, more compassionate awareness of the patterns that shape your perception.
Understanding how those unfinished experiences linger.
Yes, and how they influence your present. Understanding that gives you a remarkable ability, a greater capacity, to navigate your inner world with more clarity, more intention, maybe more freedom.
This deep dive has really only just begun to scratch the surface of these fascinating layered ideas. We definitely encourage you to continue exploring them in your own life through your own experience. What resonated most with you today? What new questions have sparked in your mind?
Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration. Until our next deep dive, keep observing, keep questioning, and keep learning about the ever-evolving, ever-fascinating landscape of your own experience.